Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Thomas Pace, Chair of the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. We have an eventful and information-packed agenda for you this morning. And so we're going to go ahead and kick off with OPSC update with Tracy Sharp. So Tracy, I know that you were thinking you were going after DSA, but we are moving you around, and I'm hoping that you are online and willing to jump in for us. And I think you're on mute. And I am trying to
Sorry, I unmuted and I think I hit the button twice. Sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to join your meeting today. It's actually the first time that I'm joining this meeting. I have other colleagues, Brian Lepask, who normally attends, but he's in the field today. So I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update of what's going on with us. Mainly, I'll just run through a couple, some highlights from our recent stakeholder meetings. Yesterday, we had a well-attended webinar on our charter school facilities program for all potential future applicants and any other interested parties on the program. With Prop 2, we got a new infusion of funds. So with a slight delay with the filing round for that program will open July 3rd of this year and be open through October 30th. I say slight delay because we did present and it was approved a delay in the opening just to make sure that any districts affected by the recent wildfires wouldn't be disadvantaged by opening it too soon. So settled on July 3rd. And again, that webinar was held yesterday. So if you are interested and weren't able to attend the slide deck, because we did it in partnership with Department of Education and the California School Finance Authority, as we've done in the past, they are integral to the process as well. The slide deck is posted on our website, and I would expect that the webinar itself will be posted soon. Sometimes it takes us a minute to get those recordings posted up there, but should be on there soon. And then, as you know, we've had ongoing stakeholder meetings as far as the implementation of Proposition 2. Proposition 2 brought a lot of new opportunities and some changes. Last week, we talked about some things at our meeting, at our Thursday meeting. These are typically happening on Thursday mornings. That's when you can expect all of them to be is generally Thursday mornings. We talked about changes to the facility hardship and seismic mitigation programs. This was a part 2 of a conversation that was started last year in June. And then as Prop 2 was coming, we decided to hold on those changes and then are following through now and making those program changes and updates as, in conjunction with our other stakeholder meetings right now. So that was last week, and it'll continue to move forward with another meeting coming up in the future. And then next week, we're planning to continue the discussions that we started at prior meetings resulting from Prop 2 on supplemental grants for MEF, minimum essential facilities, for the supplemental grant for TK, transitional kindergarten classrooms, and also the new supplemental for 75-year-old buildings. So we have that on track for next week, and then also continued discussions on the very big topic. We've gotten a lot of comments on this, the 5-year facilities master plan, and the interim housing and natural disasters components and funding opportunities that are in Prop 2. I just want to reiterate how much we really value and appreciate stakeholder participation in those meetings. during the meetings, we're getting really good questions that are helping us to, clarify and formulate the policies and the future regs as we move forward. This feedback has been critical to us as we move forward. And again, we really appreciate it. So we're not only getting it during the meetings, but then via email, and also some letters are coming in. And as you may have noticed from what's been put in the agenda for today's state allocation board meeting, we're not only including that stakeholder feedback in each item and responding to it, it's also incorporated into the future SAB meetings on top meeting items in the reports going to the board. For full transparency, what did people ask about? What were their questions? Where did we agree? Where did we maybe have some differences? And so doing our best to be fully transparent on why we're making the choices or recommendations to the board that we're making. So again, want to thank everybody for their continued participation and that valuable input given up to this point. And then speaking of today's meeting, we have our first sets of proposed regulations in the board agenda today regarding financial hardship, increasing the total bonding capacity, which the statute did from 15 million from the former 5 million, modernization eligibility for those schools located on military installations that they are allowed to participate when the facilities are 10 years old versus the 20 and 25. And then we have a section on the update for new construction eligibility for qualifying small school districts. That 3-year lock was increased by statute from 3 years to 5 years. And then we're also bringing forward changes in the grant agreement and some changes to regulation for eligible expenditures for the program for modernization and new construction projects. As the item states, these were pretty clear in statute and very straightforward, so we felt comfortable moving forward with these right away to get them into regulation and part of our regular processing. The other thing you will notice in today's agenda is in the executive officer statement and Rebecca Kirk's statement. She's previewing proposed dates for the 7th round of the Career Technical Education Facilities Program funding cycle with the reinfusion of the $600 million from Prop 2. We have been working with Department of Education and proposing that CDE open their grant application process and have those due in December of this year. And then once they've completed their review and scoring process, then the follow-up funding applications for the successful applicants who achieved that minimum score in the program of 105, that those applications would be due to OPSC in June of 2026. So yeah, that's being previewed in the executive officer statement today. And then in other news regarding wildfire support, we're continuing to work with districts who were affected by the various wildfires. And as you know from our discussions, Proposition 2 opened up new opportunities for funding to assist districts when it comes to interim housing and then other support as well. So those are, like I say, we're continuing to work with those districts and to work through the process of implementing those new opportunities in Prop 2. And that concludes my planned update. If there's questions, would this be the right time to offer questions?
Absolutely. And Tracy, I just want to thank you. I know that when we had a SAT event in our school district many years ago, you and the team provided us a lot of assistance. And I know that those school districts affected by the fires and other natural disasters are in good hands with you. And so we appreciate the work you do in that area. I'd also like to thank you for the partnership and the collaboration on the stakeholder outreach you're doing on Prop 2. I know that's not easy, and trying to come up with ways that is flexible and yet simple for all to use is a daunting task, and we appreciate your efforts in that area.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, and I realized that I was looking to my left because that's where I
No
was
worries.
on the TV, and I realized there's a TV in the back. I'm still getting used to this, so apologize.
No
All right.
worries.
And with that, I don't see any, do we have a? Perfect. And I actually am going to go backwards a couple slides before we get to Eric. So Eric, welcome. Good morning. How are you, sir? You're looking well.
Sorry about that. Just getting settled in. Doing very well. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to give 2 quick updates, and then I'm going to turn the time over to you, sir.
Sure.
I'm going to see if my clicker will allow me to know. We will do those at a different time. So Eric, I apologize. Oh, no, I think I got it up. Perfect. Yes, I made it work. Our next web shop is actually August 17th from 10 a.m. to noon. It'll be on developer fee collection, overview, and changes in the new year. And then after that, we have our spring mini conference, May 22nd, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Long Beach Marriott. All sorts of interesting topics from disaster mitigation, preparedness, legislative landscape, state budget, and Proposition 2. So with that, Eric, I think the time is yours, sir, and I look forward to hearing about all the fun things going on in DSA.
Great. Thank you. I guess I'm probably free to share, right? Sharing. I'm sending a request to share my screen. And so, are you able to see my screen? I presume you can see the DSA screen. It's actually not clear. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's not the full expanded version, but you were good. We could see that, Eric.
Okay, so yeah, and I found that sometimes in presentation mode, there are glitches. So I'm going to go ahead and just cycle through the slides in this way if it's large enough for you. Well, thank you for having me this morning. I really appreciate the time. I know Ida was extremely busy, and we've got a couple of presentations which actually include a pre-Senate hearing today. So there's no shortage of work at DSA headquarters right now, but really appreciate the ability to present to Cash. So we always like to start out with we're hiring. We actually have a number of opportunities for structural engineers. There seems to be vacancies that due to retirements that happen pretty regularly these days. So structural engineers is probably our largest need, but we also, of course, are hiring architects. We're in the middle of hiring an architect for our sustainability position here at headquarters. We have administrative positions and, of course, fire life safety officer positions too, which again are architectural positions. Moving on to some of the work that DSA is doing currently. In front of you, you can see our annual report of projects received over the fiscal year 24-25. And the red line graph really is the overall statewide number that you're looking for. And it's not exactly to scale. So the bottom number, a little bit hard to read, but it's to date in March, We have 202 projects. You can see the breakdown. Generally this month, the lion's share of the work seems to have been submitted to, at least from a cost perspective, seems to have been submitted to San Diego, followed by LA, then Oakland, and Sacramento has the least cost. But notice that those are probably small projects because there are 631 projects, but the cost of those projects is relatively low comparatively compared to the other offices. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into those numbers. You can see work on our desks for this month as graphed and outlined at the top. Oakland, and then Sacramento, LA, and of course the most are in San Diego, as indicated in the last annual graph or fiscal year graph. So San Diego, again, $500 million with roughly $500 million with 62 projects, then followed closely with LA and Oakland, with Sacramento with the least from a cost perspective. So this is tracking the spreadsheet, and I presume, I know I've presented to you before, and this is an update, so these are all graphs and tabulations that you've seen before that you're probably familiar with, but these are projected submittals for March of 25. And consistent with what the current project submittals are, you can still see that continues, with San Diego picking up the lion's share of the work, the majority of the work at 54%, and then the remainder going to the other offices, projected to go to the other offices. And again, so that's the first week of March is at the top, working down to the totals at the bottom, and we, of course, do not have projections yet on the last month, but or the last week of the month. You can see that the pattern is relatively similar, with San Diego again having the majority, with perhaps the only exception being the week of 3/16, 3/22. Moving on to April, the numbers are probably, as we move forward into the future, a little less reliable, but certainly we like to try to track them as much as possible. But again, different from the last graph, you can see that the pattern is a little bit more erratic, although San Diego does still tend to have the majority of the intended projects being submitted to them. Recently, some document updates. IRA 22, which is one of our most utilized IRs, was recently updated, and you can expect to see that updated again. And we hope that the update is bringing clarity, but some of the details of the IR that were updated. Of course, the exemption threshold was raised to 130,000, and the exemption specific amount was $293,397. The exemption threshold for all disciplines was the 130,000. Sorry. Exempt projects must comply with all design and construction and inspection requirements of the CBC, even though they're not potentially being submitted to DSA. And just a quick reminder, school districts are responsible for compliance with all code requirements. And this exemption is really only applicable to alterations to DSA certified structures. So if you're intending on having that certified, the IR is applicable. If it's an access-only project, DSA typically doesn't, as you know, do inspections. And so those, while there are exemptions for access listed, the exemption is really only applicable, as it says, to certified structures. Moving on to some accessibility resources, consistent with the the raising of the threshold, as indicated in IRA 22, the annual accessibility valuation threshold was updated and is now $203,611. The Access Compliance Advisory Manual was updated, so you can certainly see some of the new advisories through that download. And we also continue to maintain the Guide to Public Housing. We are looking forward to an update to that probably this year. Well, I'll be more committal than that this year. We will update it this year. And then, of course, we do have EVCS accessibility training that is on our LMS. We do expect, due to Prop 2, we do expect a large swell of projects coming into DSA. There were overall statewide, including state and local bonds, there were, as I'm sure you know, 42 billion in state and local bonds passed in 2024. There is a code update coming in that will become effective January 1, 2026. That we are currently going through publishing. There's another slide that deals with that, but we're currently going through publishing review. And so those codes that will become effective January 1st, 2026, which is the 2025 CBC, we are currently reviewing, and that will be published July 1, 2025. As normal, we will accept submittals beginning December of 2025, so that's a little bit early. So there's this, the 100-day, statutorily required 180-day review period from July 1 to December 31st. DSA allows folks to submit based upon the upcoming effective CBC a month early. So beginning in 2025, we'll accept 2025 CBC submittals. We have, of course, DSA has been very active in partnering with local LA schools that were affected by fire, and that involvement is at the highest level. The LA schools that have been affected are given priority through processing and really stress the importance of a thorough, appropriate fast review. The 2022 CBC PCs will be in effect through June 30th, 2026. So typical process for DSA is that even though there's a new code that's effective January 1, 2026, we do allow those PCs to be that were plan reviewed under the 2022 CBC to be utilized through June 30th of 2026. That's a fairly common practice that DSA offers to PC manufacturers and school districts. The administrative code will become effective in 2025. That's normally, normally effective a month after adoption, 3 months after adoption. And that was adopted in February, and I do have a slide on the rulemaking calendar, so we'll touch on that. But the 2025 admin code, again, will be effective April 2025 this year. DSA always emphasizes, as you know, the benefits of pre-application meetings, and we continue to stress those and certainly promote school districts and designers to take advantage of those pre-application meetings. We continue to hear that they're very beneficial and significantly reduce the time under review for DSA, primarily because everybody is on the same page moving into the submittal. But the purpose of those meetings can cover a variety of things to determine if submission to DSA is required or whether it's exempt, pursuant to IRA 22, if there's questions, to determine if the project is exempt in its entirety, to discuss the schedule, funding, the budget impacts, discuss code interpretations on a discipline basis. We try to get all disciplines in the room or give you the ability to meet with all disciplines, And then if there are questions about new code requirements or upcoming code requirements, we certainly are available to answer those questions as well. Rulemaking update for all disciplines. As I mentioned, we are currently in the review period for which BSC calls the publication period, but we review proofs of the publisher proofs of the upcoming code. We're currently sort of at the beginning stages of that, but it honestly started about a month ago because there were portions of the code that were adopted back in January rather than February. There was a delay due to quorum that BSC had to reschedule one of their adoption meetings. So that didn't take place until February. So through their sequencing off a little bit, but they are in partnership with all the adopting and proposing agencies, they're catching up pretty well. If you're interested in following the rulemaking, you can certainly go to Building Standards Commission's webpage. They do have a listserv that you can subscribe to, which is separate from our listserv. I would recommend receiving emails on both if you don't mind. A few extra emails in your inbox. DSA tries not to flood your inbox with too many emails, but BSC follows suit as well. They don't really flood you with a bunch of emails, but there are important updates that you can receive on their webpage and through their listserv. Consistent with every cycle, there is a pretty good overlap of the rulemaking calendar. So we are currently working on pre-cycle activities for the 2025 intervening cycle, which will become, which creates the supplement, the Title 24 supplement to the 2025 CBC. That supplement will become effective July 1, 2027. DSA has already conducted a workshop for access to receive access proposals. I know that Diane's group on the structural safety side is currently considering what cleanup or proposals, amendments should be considered. I do not believe there's been a workshop scheduled for them yet, but the pre-cycle activities for the intervening cycle is fairly lengthy. You see that we're pretty early in the process. Technically began January, really didn't begin in earnest until February after the full adoption of the 2025 CBC took place. As part of those pre-cycle activities, BSC and DSA did conduct an initial meeting reconvening the Calgreen Carbon Reduction Collaborative. I'm sure you're all aware of the embodied carbon regulations that were passed in during the 2022 intervening cycle. We have not seen significant projects submitted that are required to comply with those requirements as of yet, but we do anticipate those coming in. And the Carbon Reduction Collaborative really continues to be convened to identify needed updates to those regulations. It's a pretty large group. If you're interested in joining those, certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to make sure that you are informed of the meetings that are going to be taking place. The Calgreen Carbon Reduction Collaborative is one example of a cross-agency support that DSA conducts. We do that with Building Standards Commission. I would say that Housing Community Development is also part of that collaborative, not mentioned on the slide, but they do attend and are active in that collaborative as well. We continue to meet with California Energy Commission, and we meet monthly with them, and a lot of our collaboration these days tends to be focused on solar requirements. And so we have been working with the Energy Commission to clarify those requirements in their upcoming 2028 Energy Code amendments. We also are very active here at headquarters with Air Resources Board. If you're aware, AB 2446 and AB 43 are bills that were passed to achieve the greenhouse gas reduction goals that were set by the governor, and also to lay out some specific roadmap, a specific roadmap to achieve those carbon reduction goals. Program updates. The Public School Construction Collaborative met, but it is the primary the primary work that collaborative does is to offer insight on matters that protect the intent of the Field Act, advise DSA on policy issues, review and comment on proposed legislation, review and advise DSA on IRs. And one of the critical elements of that, and we always look forward to this, is they serve as a liaison to stakeholder groups that they represent, bringing forward information, whether it's topics that are delaying plan review, or if it's regulatory requirements that are unclear. We really value the input that public school construction, we call it the PSCC, provides to DSA. And of course, they review and comment on CBC. We do have 3 vacancies. Excuse me. We have a fire life safety representative that's vacant, a general contractor, and a school district facility representative. So if you're interested in filling any of those roles, and you have the appropriate qualifications, we certainly would invite you to email us and express your interest. That will be forwarded on to Kirk Cooknick, the deputy to the state architect, and his staff in our communications group, and they will be going through the selection process for that to fill those vacancies. On to workforce and student housing. PL 2401 was recently updated, and that was updated primarily to include AB 358 and clarify some of those requirements. It also clarifies the previous bill, AB 306, which dealt with workforce housing. As you know, or as you may know, AB 358 exempted community college district student housing from DSA review. Does not prohibit it. DSA still offers those reviews should a community college desire to have DSA review it. Should they desire to have the locals review it, then they will, of course, need to submit to the local jurisdiction and make sure that they're aware of all the risks associated to that, risks and benefits associated to submitting to the local jurisdictions. Some of the risks are requirements to conform to local ordinances and their review processes. Certainly, if you see not submitting to DSA as a benefit, then that might be conceived as a benefit as well. We don't see it that way. BU 2403, Green Schoolyards, that was recently passed just last year, SB 1091, authored by Senator Menjivar. But that limits path of travel improvements for green schoolyards projects to 20%. So certainly beneficial to reduce heat island effect in extreme environments. So and actually really any place in California benefits from the addition of a green schoolyard project, whether it's planting trees or other landscape at the school. So those projects can be limited to 20% of path of travel improvement costs that are triggered by that alteration. So we have issued BU 2403 and that references DSA Form 450, which is a compliance declaration, and it requires the design professional to complete information describing the scope of the project and asserting that it complies with green schoolyards requirements that are outlined in BU 2403. Some document updates on accessibility. PR 2404, unreasonable hardship. So that was a long overdue update, but it's been out on the street for quite a while. Issued 9/18/24. We believe it's much more clear and simple to submit an unreasonable hardship. That's not suggesting that it's changing the code requirements. It just clarifies the process to submit. As a partner document, the DSA-1 RUH was updated, but we also created a reasonable request for technical infeasibility, which is similar but not precisely the same thing as an unreasonable hardship. If you're familiar, a technical infeasibility really is based upon the inability to structurally comply with the regulations, whether it's eliminating a shear wall or moving a column or something of that nature. Those could be considered technical infeasibility. RUH is really primarily about cost, and I recognize there's some correlation between the two, but specifically from a code perspective, an unreasonable hardship is distinctly different. So certainly avail yourself to those on our website. The BU 2401, the application of fire life safety provisions, California existing building code that became effective July 1, 2024. So it applies to all building additions, alterations, change of occupancy, non-conforming buildings, non-conforming building rehabilitation projects submitted to DSA. It outlines the compliance methods, sections 301.2 and 301.3. And the compliance method adopted and available for use by design professionals is really limited to the section 301.3.1 prescriptive compliance only. DSA does not permit the application of the work area compliance, and we also don't permit the application of performance compliance. Not a whole lot to say on that, but certainly if there are questions, you can forward those to DSA and we'll be happy to clarify their requirements. AB 2565, which generates, which is covered in BU 2404, has been issued, and it is contingent upon. So this is the school locks, and it essentially expands the requirements to all classroom locks with a particular occupancy, I think 5 or more, within a building that's being altered. Now, the bill specifically is contingent upon the determination of appropriation by the state. I do not know whether or not the state has considered that appropriation. We are continuing to track that, but as of right now, it has not been. So that is something that DSA does not. DSA, as you know, should not be enforcing statute. So that's the responsibility of the school district and design professionals to know that that is a state law. Once they are included in the plans, of course, we'll be reviewing those locks for conformance to fire life safety requirements and accessibility requirements. But we will not be enforcing adding those locks until there is a direction by the legislature for us to update regulations. As of right now, that has not occurred, and that was not part of the bill as well. And actually, those regulations would be updated by the State Fire Marshal at DSA, should they be ordered to be. Site safety plan. Actually, there will be an update to this BU 2405 today. There's been, I'm going to make a quick on the fly edit there. There's been, as continue to see updates needed for this bulletin. The requirement that you will see come out today requires that any 102 IC submitted after February 1, 2025 be submitted with a site safety plan. This is, I want to stress, this is not a requirement that DSA has put into regulations is a requirement by the state fire marshal. And I'm not saying that's pass buck, but for fire life safety provisions, DSA does not adopt regulations. We simply enforce those regulations that the state fire marshal has adopted. So in the 2022 CBC, there was a requirement to submit, when submitting for a building permit, that a site safety plan be approved. I also want to stress that this site safety plan has always been in regulations, primarily enforced through OSHA, but the state fire marshal has moved those specifically into the fire code and a reference in the building code. So there are, I think, 12 items that need to be included on the site safety plan. DSA is not reviewing it. The site safety plan, it continues to be a requirement for the owner, and that the owner should be receiving input from the contractor. It includes things like staging areas where hazardous materials are stored, if there's a fencing plan that's altered, identification of a site safety officer on site. So there are, again, 12 items that need to be included in that plan, and DSA is not reviewing that. We don't have really any insight as to the intent of some of those sections, and leaves that to the building owner to interpret those loose requirements as best they can. They can certainly reach out to the state fire marshal. I believe the state fire marshal also has a bulletin on this for their enforcement, but you're certainly willing to reach out to them. Not trying to pass the buck again. DSA just does not have a whole lot of ability to enforce this, other than the requirements to have one submitted. Emergency planning and preparedness. With no declared emergency, you can certainly reach out to your DSA regional office. If there's an emergency declared, request assistance from your local enforcement entity and DSA, and they will dispatch a DSA SAP through Cal OES. There's a fact sheet that's available here with a live link, and I can provide this. If I didn't provide this, I can certainly provide the presentation to this group. And that way you'd have the live links available to you. Emergencies continue to grow, and DSA will meet the need. We do have DSA Academy available on our webpage, and we are looking to expand the offerings that will be available to that, and are working on continued expansion of that. But we have the EVCS accessibility that I mentioned earlier, housing at a place of education, circulation paths, CRASC and CASP reports, CASP 101 certification practice. That's still live, but we are looking to move that to on demand. And then we have the all-electric schools kitchen of the future, green schoolyards, and the 2022 code amendments, as well as structural plan review. All those are available on our Academy. Certainly follow the QR code, sign up for our listserv. If you're interested in any topic that DSA covers, we'd love to be able to keep you updated. And that is it.
Well, Eric, I appreciate the time you took. That was very thorough, and I learned a lot. And I would say a couple things. IRA 22 is my favorite piece of literature that you put out. I have a copy of it on my desk. I am constantly memorizing the exemptions that are out there. And I also once gave Ida a hard time about a couple things I thought that were a little excessive in code. And she reminded me, if you don't like them, you should participate in the rule-making process. She said, we rarely get people to talk about things that are excessive in the code. And so I'm gonna just, advise all listening that get involved. If you don't like some of the things that are occurring, there is a rule-making process, and I'm glad that you brought it up for a reason, and it's open for all to participate. So appreciate you, sir, and all that you do.
You're welcome, and you're not alone in that being your favorite document. I hope that the updates and there will be another one following in another, probably a week or so. I hope those updates are clear, and we've tried to separate the table that was this long list of table with a ton of footnotes, like 30 or 40. I think it's much more clear, but we certainly, there's always room for improvement. So if you have any comments on clarity that you'd like to provide to us, certainly welcome to do that. And yeah, we are always looking for attendees at our public workshops for rulemaking. Thank you for mentioning that.
In IRA 22, I came to the conclusion that you didn't want anything to be exempt after reading the table and all of the footnotes. So any clarity on that, I'm sure, is a good thing, and we appreciate that. So thank you, sir. So with that, we're going to bring up Nancy Charez Espinoza to give us a legislative, regulatory, and maintenance network update.
We've gotten some great updates already from our regulatory partners, so we're going to focus on the legislative piece of this today. We always like to give you an overview about what the legislature itself is up to, and then we're going to highlight some key bills that we're tracking or engaging on today. So first off, the policy committees are in full swing. Those agendas are full. They have begun to hold their policy committee hearings around mid-March. Those began. Most bills that are introduced are keyed fiscal, which means they have an identified state fiscal impact. So they have to be heard by both the policy and the fiscal committees, which means that they have to be approved by their policy committees by an early May deadline, and they have to be approved by the fiscal committee by a late May deadline, or they're effectively dead for the year. Bills that are determined to be non-fiscal get about an extra week there. So that is the reason that the policy committees are so busy right now, because they're working towards meeting those deadlines. On a parallel track, the budget committees are also busy dissecting and discussing the governor's proposals for the 2025-26 fiscal year state budget. They divide up the work into their respective areas. And for example, tomorrow's Senate Subcommittee number 1 on education is meeting, and on its agenda, it includes an item on the state school facilities program. So of course, we'll be monitoring that. There's no action proposed on that agenda. The budget development process is a little bit more in flux than normal this year for a few reasons. One, because of the Southern California wildfires and the fact that the estimates of the cost to recover from that are a moving target effectively. And that's something that the legislature and the governor do want to address in the budget process. So that's one factor that is a moving target. Another is changes in federal spending, which of course we're hearing something new every day there, and delayed tax collections. This is something that often we see that the state will give people more time to file their state income taxes when they are in an area that's affected by a natural disaster, which is obviously a very kind and compassionate thing to do. The impact that it has on the budget process is that all of the folks involved in crafting a budget agreement are operating on delayed information. So they don't have the most current information, and it increases the likelihood that they have to go back and kind of make adjustments later. So all of those things are happening at the same time. Everyone involved in the budget process is working towards the May revision, which is when the governor sort of trues up his proposals based on the most recent tax collection data and assumptions about all of those factors that I mentioned and more. And from there, the negotiation begins in earnest among leaders to pass the main budget bill by the June 15th constitutional deadline. And I specify the main budget bill because increasingly what they agree on is kind of a high-level framework, and more work is left to be done in the form of trailer bills in the months afterwards. So we expect that to be the case, particularly in a year like this year where there are so many variables. Let's see. With respect to school facilities, because the legislature and the governor largely expect Proposition 2 to take care of our school facilities needs, there isn't anything that would be a tremendous impact on us that we are watching, but that doesn't mean there isn't anything. There are some things where kitchen infrastructure funds is something else that hangs in the balance. It was in the governor's January proposal. The LAO has some questions about whether they should maybe slow that down, do some assessment. So it remains to be seen whether that will be included. There's also, I want to say it was a $56 million proposal for the use of Prop 4 funds, the environmental bond, the climate bond that just passed. And it's a broader program, sort of green schoolyards, parks, things like that. So it would be open to not just schools, but schools could potentially be eligible for that. So that's the kind of thing that we're watching. And of course, we continue to monitor and engage as necessary in that process. So stay tuned for updates on that. I do want to take a moment to plug our cash-sponsored bill, AB 503 Gonzalez. This is the bill to restore authorization for school districts to collect fees from those community groups that use our facilities pursuant to the Civic Center Act. There were two fees, one for operational, one for facilities. So restoration, repair, and refurbishment of your facilities pursuant to those uses. And the latter is the one that sunsetted on January 1st. We're trying to restore that authorization for those school districts that need it. Not every school district chooses to collect those fees. That bill will be heard in the Assembly Committee on Education on April 9th, which makes the deadline to submit your letters of support April 1st. Please submit those letters. They are required to be submitted via the legislative position letter portal. We've sent out instructions via cash emails on how to do that previously with a template and other things that may help you. But if you just want to Google California Legislative Position Letter Portal, it'll take you directly there and instructions are included. Lastly, we are also working on Proposition 2 implementation. You've gotten a great update on that. So all I will say is that we want to thank the Office of Public School Construction staff for what has been, and we are sure will continue to be a very collaborative process. And we appreciate the opportunity to work with them. And to our cash members, we want to remind you to reach out to us, any of the members of the legislative team or your cash leadership, if you have thoughts on any of the proposals that you are seeing come up at these stakeholder meetings or the topics that are being dealt with. We really appreciate your input, and it helps us be more effective as advocates. So with that, I'm going to toss it to my colleague Ian and then Rebecca, who will give you some updates on key bills.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, everyone. I've just got a quick update on a bill that Cash is following, tracking, and engaging on, and that's AB 832, which has to do with the CalShape program. Quickly, if you remember, there is no CalShape program right now. As part of the deliberations of the budget process from the middle of last year through about December, the program went away. There was some pushback for that, but ultimately projects that were submitted were approved and funded, but going forward, the program was closed. Now we enter this bill, AB 832, and it does two things. It reinstates the CalShape program until 2030. Right now, it closed last year. So there's that. There's some attempts at making some changes, some improvements, and so on to allow the CEC, who administers the program, to basically improve the program, get the funding out quicker. So that's all good stuff, right? Air quality is a big local priority for schools. Ventilation, HVAC, a lot of focus on that since COVID, but even before that, really. But the issue is, so why don't we just have a support on this one? Well, it also would require that new standards, guidelines, and recommendations be developed. And so we're, of course, not against guidelines or standards, but that piece is new. And also, there's wide agreement among the stakeholders in the air quality area that the ASHRAE standard, that's essentially what governs and is the real standards. So there's wide agreement with that. So our Cash Legislative Committee took a support if amended position on this, right? What does that mean? Well, we definitely support more funding and programs, right? Restoration of a pretty good program for that. Semicolon, however, we don't think it's necessary to create new standards. So that's a point that we'll make. And if there was a change there, certainly our position could change if it didn't include that new requirement. So again, not against the standards, but the ASHRAE standards have been the standards for quite a while. As a matter of fact, CalShape essentially in many ways makes the ASHRAE standards in statute. So keep an eye on that bill. We hope it is amended in a way that just allows the CalShape program to go forward and be a resource for districts that need some more assistance with their HVAC and ventilation issues. So with that, and I would just say that our Cash Environmental Committee is meeting in person today, a hybrid, and we are going to be taking a look at that bill. Both that committee and the Cash Maintenance Network have been very involved in the air quality pieces for Cash since around 2019, since AB 841, which is the bill that created the CalShape program. So stay tuned on that. Pretty good news, but we still have some concern going forward. But really, that's the legislative. Right now we make the points, and hopefully it'll be amended in a way that we can support. So thank you very much, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Just a couple of additional bill updates. We're in that time of year, right? This is when we're in the peak of all the really good ideas, and they're going to be winnowed down in this process. But another issue that I've talked to you about many times before is ballot label reform. And there is another attempt this year by a coalition of public agency folks to, again, try to crack that nut. We're trying to get at that issue where in your 75-word ballot label for local bonds, there was legislation in 2017 that requires 3 pieces of information in that ballot label that doesn't make sense for bonds. So this is the rate of the tax, the duration, and the amount that you expect to receive annually. So those things make a lot of sense for flat taxes like sales taxes, parcel taxes. Doesn't make much sense for bonds as those numbers do fluctuate year by year, depending on what's happening in the economy, in your bond program, et cetera. So AB 699 Stephanie is a bill that will try and make changes to this. The bill right now, as of yesterday, I haven't checked it today, but as of yesterday, if you pulled it up, the language was what's essentially a spot bill. So not a lot of information there about what the plan is, but the plan is to reintroduce the option to continue using the AB 195. Sorry, now I'm using the jargon from 2017, to use those pieces of information that are in current law in your ballot label, or if you are a bond measure or a tiered tax measure, so a measure that has multiple tax rates, you could have another option, which would be to put a statement on the ballot label that directs voters to their voter guide to indicate to them that there is more information. It's complex, it's detailed, but go read the tax rate statement that is in your voter information guide. That's the best place to find more information about the potential impacts to you, because it is complex and requires more space to explain. So that bill will be up in the Elections Committee in the Assembly on April 9th. Cash does have a support position on this, which is consistent with our historical support for trying to provide another way to help inform voters about local bonds in a way that does not confuse them. The second thing that I want to talk about is there are a couple of bills that are related to school construction and specifically procurement options that have been introduced. Now, I will say that Cash has a neutral position on both of these bills, a watch position. So we haven't taken an active position, but we want to inform you about these so that you understand that they are moving through the legislative process and may provide some additional potential options in your contracting. The first is AB 361 Schultz. This is a best value procurement bill. So currently the Los Angeles Unified School District has a pilot program that allows them to do best value procurement for projects of $1 million or higher. And this bill would expand that to all school districts. So not just LAUSD anymore. LA would get a permanent authorization, and other school districts and county offices of education would have a sunset on this authority of December 31st, 2030. So what is best value? So this is not just low bid, it is a best combination of price and qualifications. And so those qualifications could be things like financial condition, relevant experience, demonstrated management competency, labor compliance, safety record, and subcontractor qualifications. So you can set kind of the terms of how you're going to evaluate those bids upfront and then consider factors other than price. Now, the reason that cash is in a watch position on this bill is that it does require a skilled and trained workforce or a project labor agreement. And so that has just led us to a place of watching it, informing you about it, and want you to know that that's out there. And then AB 948 Flora is another bill. It's related specifically to task order contracting. So another one where LAUSD currently has the authority to do task order, the rest of the districts do not. This bill, it would allow task order contracting for some schools and projects. So if you've got ADA of 10,000 or less, so small and medium-sized districts, and then projects under 3 million. And this would also be available to school districts and county offices of education. What is task order? So this is really trying to get at repair and renovation. So service, repairs. Think if you want a repair contract for your HVACs across multiple sites after you have some kind of major weather event, you want to be able to call somebody out to service all of those, then you can do that through task order. This one is interesting because the LA pilot does, or the LA authorization does require the project labor agreement, but this bill, AB 948, does not include any provisions related to skilled and trained or PLA. And so we'll see how that is viewed in the legislative process. So with that, wanted to inform you about some of the fun stuff that's happening in the state legislature. We'll continue to keep you informed about these and other bills as they move through the legislative process. And I will hand it back to your chair, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, Ian, and Rebecca. We're now going to have a School Energy Coalition update. So we're going to bring Nancy back up, and then we will follow that with a federal network update. And so Ian, feel free when Nancy's done to come on up.
Thank you again, Tom. So I'm going to give an update on a few bills that SCC is active on, two of which we've taken a formal position, and another as an example of these things that kind of come up organically and we have to engage. We may or may not take a formal position. I'll explain why. So first, SCC took a support position on AB 13 ransom. This bill, among other things, allows each house of the legislature to appoint a liaison officer to appear before the Public Utilities Commission in its proceedings. What we like about this bill is the potential to create another avenue for representation for public agencies like school districts who really struggle to have the influence that investor-owned utilities or those who are able to participate in the intervenor compensation program do in those proceedings. So we have supported that one. We also took a support position on SB 496 Hurtado. This bill would create a committee to hear appeals to the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation at the California Air Resources Board. The bill specifies the composition of the committee, including state and local government representatives with expertise relating to government fleets. Even though most of our members tell us so far in the year or so that we've been working with the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation that their experience has been pretty positive, we are looking ahead to the gradual tightening, right, of those milestone requirements and the fact that the technology does not exist to meet the needs of school districts, in all of the regions of California, right? The technology does not perform as well if you have to deal with any kind of elevation, terrain, if you're in the desert, things like that. So we are looking ahead and making sure that we have a good process to make smart decisions in those cases. That bill is co-sponsored by various other public agency associations like the Special Districts Association, League of Cities, State Association of Counties, and others. So it's a collaborative process, and we're happy to support that moving forward. The last bill I want to mention is one on which the School Energy Coalition does not yet have an official position. We are hoping and believe that we are going to be able to get our concern with this bill addressed and won't even have to take a position on it. This is SB 57 Padilla, and shout out to the author and their staff who have been really responsive so far. This bill establishes a threshold over which data centers would be fully responsible for their costs of energy transmission. The issue they're trying to target here is those really big commercial data centers who may draw in the same amount of power as like an entire neighborhood or city. So we take no issue with what they're trying to accomplish here. Unfortunately, the introduced version of the bill had a very broad definition of data center. So we're trying to make sure they don't capture little, school district data centers, right? That's not what their aim is. The bill also would require that 100% of all the electricity used by these data centers is zero carbon by January 1st, 2030. Again, they're not trying to net us in, so our conversation with them is about what is the right threshold, and we've gone back and forth a little bit, but so far they definitely seem to not intend to include schools. So we appreciate their collaboration. We're going to continue to work with them on that. And that is all I have for the SEC update.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm just going to give a brief Cash Federal network update. And of course, that is Cash's focus, advocacy focus on funding and programs at the federal level. We do know, obviously, there's been a change in administration and some uncertainty there. So that is why that our trip about a month ago back, I think was actually well-timed in terms of continuing to let whoever would listen to us, frankly. We met with over 20 offices that schools are part of infrastructure and should continue to be discussed in that way. And so we're going to keep going up there a couple times a year to make that case. So also I did want to mention, we actually had, I will say it was a little bit surprising to me, very well attended CFN workshops at the annual conference. We had standing room only. So while there's some confusion, there continues to be interest in other ways to address local needs. And that's what the CFN will continue to do. So stay tuned with that. Thank you.
And to talk about the conference, I'm here to talk about the annual conference. So I want to, we completed the 46th annual conference in Palm Springs, and it was a huge success. I want to thank everybody that supported the conference, those that attended, those that did workshops and web shops. It was a great turnout, and there was great energy. There was a lot of conversation, great networking at the event, and we're really excited and happy to see how the conference went in Palm Springs. But now we're ready to start planning for the next year's conference, and that is actually starting today. So the planning committee will be meeting today at 1 o'clock to kick off the start for our conference that'll be held in Sacramento next year. And the conference will be in February 25th through the 22nd. So please mark your calendars for that right now. Also, another date to keep in mind for the next conference is that we are going to be doing the workshop, the workshop call for topics, and that will happen in April 14th, and we'll have about a month time frame for those topics to be submitted. So if you have something that you're very interested in, or you'd like to expand on what you did at last year or this past conference, please start thinking about that now and put together your topic, because there will be a lot of submittals for the topic. So we're very excited about that. Next slide, please. I'd also like to share, we are starting the planning for the fall conference as well. As you can see, this is not our typical location of where the fall conference is held. It's going to be held at the Hyatt in Irvine. And the dates for the fall conference are October 15th through the 17th. The online registration will be available on the Cash website this summer. So start planning for that. Cash board and Cash staff are starting to look at topics for the fall conference, and we're really excited to kick off at a new location and expand on what we've done at the Hyatt in Newport. All right, thank you.
Well, our annual conference is a success every year, largely due in part to all of your efforts. And so we appreciate everyone who participates in it, who takes the time to think of topics, present us those topics, and educate our membership. So we appreciate all of you and the time and effort you put into the annual conference. To conclude today's meeting, as always, we do a job exchange. You can see that there are several openings throughout California, including in my hometown of San Diego. And so let us move forward. Mark your calendar. The next Cash Day will be held virtually, April 23rd. And I think that says 11 to 12:15, 11 to 12:15. So with that, does anyone in the audience, and I appreciate those who showed up in person, and hopefully we gave you some good cookies and coffee. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to mention now before we adjourn? Perfect. And with that, thank you very much.